Hi Eduardo, ¿cómo estás?
I'm doing well. ¿Cómo estás tú? ¿Quieres hacer la entrevista en inglés o español?
No, mi español no está tan bien, es mejor, no lo puedo hacer en francés muy bien, pero yo creo es mejor en inglés.
Sí,
Okay?
no, I couldn't do it in French. My French is very poor. So how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. When you have a glass of a very good sparkling wine in your hand, the day is always very good.
Yeah, that's true. And I was telling my audience that I'm very excited about doing this interview, not just because it's February, the month of love, and a lot of people associate this month with drinking bubbles, but also because I've been a fan of Louis Roederer for a number of years. You're a very well-regarded, very well-known house out of Champagne in France, and this is your outpost. That would be the word in the United States, more specifically in California. And I know that for many years, La Cava de Serrayes has been carrying your labels, your products, and they have tons of fans here in Puerto Rico. So before we get into the interview, I just like to show the wines for my viewers, those who are connected with us right now and those who will watch later in YouTube. So we're going to do two sparkling wines, the Roederer Estate Brut, and then we're going to do this Rosé. Now you can see the labels, and we're going to talk a little bit about Roederer Estate. First of all, before we get into the actual wines, I want to speak a little bit about you, your upbringing, your growing up in your motherland. Were you exposed to wine from an early age? Tell me a little bit about your career, and take me back to when you were first exposed to wines and champagne.
Right. So Eduardo, I wanted to thank you for welcoming you on your TV show, and want to thank everybody in Puerto Rico for watching this show, and I hope everything is doing well and recovered from those difficult years after the hurricane. So a little bit about me. I'm French born and raised. Is from Alsace, so the northern part of France, near Germany. So it's really white wine world over there. It's the land of Riesling and Gewürztraminer, and this type of white wines. But my family has always been very loving of wine. I didn't know it back in the days, but we had always some good wine in the cellar. So, and as you're French, like in a lot of other European countries, even if you're in Spain or Italy, wine is on your table like you have bread and salt and pepper. There's always a bottle of wine on the table. So it's part of one thing, you have to do a wine pairing. Food and wine pairing is typical. So as a youngster in France, in Europe, you end up tasting wine, trying wine fairly early on, because cheese and water doesn't go very well. Cheese and a bit of red wine or white is fantastic, right? So you learn that pretty young that you have to get something like this to discover the flavors. And
that's right.
And my parents, like to entertain and have friends over, and they had a very large, choice of liquors, cognac, Armagnac, whiskey, vodka. But they would never drink, themselves. It would be for the friends, because every time they could actually open something for themselves, they would always go for a bottle of champagne. So that was their go-to. It's let's have a drink because it's Saturday, or let's have a drink because it's Sunday. Champagne was the go-to drink, and then basically I followed the same path, just because we would be drinking good grower champagne, also champagne from known houses, Louis Roederer, Krug, Veuve Clicquot, things that would be interesting, and then you start to just enjoy them and drink them. And in the course of basically my studies, I ended up having a choice to go to a famous school in Montpellier, in the south of France, and to learn about a lot of things: agriculture, agronomy, but also business. And then as you have to pick a major, this is always the thing, you're 18, 20 years old, and you have to pick a major. What are you interested, to do in life? And I had a very fantastic, teacher, a professor of viticulture, who was really a bigger than life, person. He was, he had a lot of connection. The guy had a fantastic knowledge. He was a great person to be around. His name was Monsieur Boubals. And that gentleman liked to travel. He would be going to Argentina, Chile, California, but also he liked that part of the world very much. And it got us, us youngsters, interested by the bug of, discovering the world of the wine, and also being interested by the technical challenges of growing grapes and making wine as well. So that's how I got the bug, and I finally picked my major to be winemaking and vineyard management, and I ended up doing this and taking an internship in California in 1993, working for Roederer Estate, so the offspring of Champagne Roederer here in California. And it was supposed to be just a short internship just to discover California, the new world, all the excitement of what's happening here, and then the rest is kind of history.
Very interesting, Arnaud. I like to always recognize our viewers, and we have an important question from Easy Dinero. How similar to Cristal is California Roederer Estate? Can you reply that in maybe a minute?
Oh, wow. I would need 10 hours to reply to this, but no, in a minute. So Cristal is the iconic tête de cuvée of Champagne Roederer, so which is the best of the best of what the estate in France, in Champagne can do. And that has been iconic, for over 50 years in Europe and France. And when the family established the estate in California, obviously they wanted to also have us winemakers create an iconic tête de cuvée, which is called l'Hermitage here in California. I'm trying very hard to make it as iconic as possible as Cristal. We'll get there at some point. I still believe now that Cristal is far over there in terms of the knowledge, the precision, the focus, just because the house has 200 years of experience and we have only about 40 years of experience of the vineyard. So like anything, time tells where you have to pick your grapes, where you better soil, you better terroir in this. We still have to learn that in California. So it's going to take us a few more years to get there.
I understand. And Ricky Cortez, our dear friend who's here, been a friend of yours for a number of years, working directly with the winery, mentioned something that is totally true, that for a number of years, well more than a number of years, your wines in California have been regarded as the best sparkling wines in the United States. The Hermitage has been consistently in the top 5, top 10 best wines of the year. And kudos to that. It's an unbelievable wine. So now let's talk a little bit about Louis Roederer, the French champagne house, and then we'll piggyback and jump into the American operation. How could you describe, or in a nutshell, share with us a little bit about the history of the champagne house in Champagne?
Yeah, it's a fantastic history. For people that are history buff, this is the story of the world, by one, family. So it got started in 1776. So different branches of the family, basically. So small wine house, gets started, and then makes it, through, a lot of things happening, in Europe back in those days. The different wars. Champagne is the northeast part of France, so it's not very far from Germany. So it got, very close to the battleground of the First World War, and obviously got, totally engulfed in the Second World War. So that family kept making wine, even though it was been a difficult place, in France and the world, because of difficulties through time. But what the family did, it was to actually become one of the finest purveyor of champagne to the aristocrats of Russia. And then to name one was in fact the Tsar of Russia, Alexander II, was a fanatic of champagne. Russians back in the days were extremely Francophile. They would speak French, drink French, eat French. Even their palaces would look like French castles. And then the castle, the summer castle in St. Petersburg, it looks very much like the Chateau of Versailles in France. And obviously, the Alexander II being the Tsar, he wanted to have something very special that only himself could afford. He liked the champagne made by Louis Roederer, and he wanted something very extremely unique. And he asked, Champagne Roederer to craft a very special blend just for him, bottled in something that was extremely expensive back in the days, a bottle of Cristal made out of real Cristal. So it would be above the aristocrats. It would be even more special because those were expensive, bottles of wines. That's how the family in France made its wealth and its reputation, until the Bolshevik kind of cut a dent a little bit in that family wealth exporting to Russia. But what it was known for was the crafting of unique wines. And then Jean-Claude Rousseau, who was the family member who was running the winery in France in the 70s, decided to recreate, or rebring, maybe I should say, the winery to its fame by trying to grow the winery outside of the boundaries of Champagne in France. And that's how he looked at the New World. And the New World was Australia, was New Zealand, but was also California in terms of where the winery could go. And definitely picked that California would be a place to establish.
Yeah, I want to stop there a bit because that's the bridge, right? And why was that decision made? Why California, not, let's say, Australia or Argentina?
Right. In fact, he had a little stint, looking at Australia. So he, for a few years, he actually had a joint venture in Tasmania. But it was difficult to grow the grapes. It was difficult to manage exactly how he wanted. He wanted to be very involved and have a lot of precision in what was done. So Tasmania didn't last very long. But the California project, definitely was something that he jumped into, because he could actually decide on where he could plant the vineyards, so the location here in the Emerson Valley in Northern California, because he was looking at the climate, he was looking at the land availability with the type of soil he wanted, and he also wanted to craft a méthode champenoise, so sparkling wine made as if it were champagne, so méthode champenoise. He also in a market that was growing and was opening up itself to fine wine and also fine dining. Back in the 70s, 80s, America was not big on wine drinking or fine dining. It was still reserved to the elite. But there were some marketing studies. There were some people saying, well, no, America will soon stop drinking sodas and coffee and beer and be more interested into the fine wines and stuff like that. And it did happen. In the 70s, you were already the Mondavis, planting vineyards in Napa. You had some French also champagne houses established themselves in Napa. For example, Chandon in 72. You had some American made sparkling wineries like Schramsberg in Napa. They're already crafting beautiful méthode champenoise early in the late 60s. So there was that move of some other European wineries making the move to California. So Jean-Claude Rousseau decided to be on that wave also because he felt it was the right time to make the move.
And how long have you been making the wines for Roederer Estate?
I've been working for the family over 24 years, but I've actually taken the reins at the winemaker at the winery since 2003.
That's great. And when do you make these wines, when you craft these wines, I mean, you're working with fruit that's grown in New World land, right? American soil. You have obviously not only a French training, but literally French biology. You're a Frenchman, and you've been drinking the best of the best of champagne. So when you make these wines, do you try to replicate a little bit of the French style, or do you go a little bit more for a New World and American palate? What's your thinking when you're crafting these wines?
Right. And so there's something that's very humbling about making sparkling wine is actually when you make the wine, you never taste the finished product, because the méthode champenoise, it becomes bubbly as a second fermentation in the bottle, right? After the fact. So I think that's the very humbling is you have to trust the elders, your mentors, the people you work with, the people you learn from. This is the way you do it. This is the way you blend your wine, so that if you do it correctly, by the time it does take the second fermentation in bottle, it's going to be that way.
I had never thought of it this way. I mean, this is an incredible answer. I've done more than 300 interviews, and it's a bit of a leap of faith. You're trusting that the end product will be of pleasure to the end customer, the drinker.
Exactly. So one thing that I think that makes the strength of the house, because we're family owned, is that we've always been tasting, not just by yourself. So it's not, oh, this is the one made by, I don't know where it's, right? This is the one made by a winemaker that was, educated, maybe, formally, in a school, but then after that, you have also learned with your peers, with other winemakers from the house, on what is the house style, how you judge that this one is better than that one, because another house, they may not judge it the same way, and also how you trust the knowledge and the, I would say, house style that has been learned, and it is passed on from one generation to the next. So when I was a young winemaker and I started in the 90s, actually I was tasting with some of the previous winemakers, and then the joke was, in that room there was 140 years of winemaking knowledge around the table, and I was the one that was bringing 1 year of knowledge. It means the 139 years of knowledge were the other guys, and me, I was just the young guy with just 1 year of history. That was pretty fun, very humbling. So
great answer.
You learn from it, and you're not trying to replicate, because it's very would be difficult, or would be forced to say that you can actually replicate something, because it's not a recipe. It's more one of intent. You're trying very much to do something, and every year Mother Nature brings you something different, more ripeness, less ripeness, sometimes more yield, less yield, acidity, things like that. So things are changing, but the intent remains the same, which is to craft a wine that have, what I would try to say in a nutshell, it's a sparkling wine. So it can be fun, but at the same time it's serious, because it is a wine that has a benefit of having bubbles. So the base wine by itself needs to be already a beautiful white wine.
Yeah.
An acidity, some fruitiness, but the start, the middle, and the finish. And sometimes that's the problem of some of the sparkling wine. There's no finish. The wine doesn't last. There's not that lingering feeling of freshness and impression. I think that's the style of the house. It's a wine, so that ends up being bubbly. It has to be.
I have to confess something to you and to our viewers. So I've had many of the Louis Roederer wines out of Champagne, right? And from California, I had only had the Hermitage. I had never had the Roederer Estate that we're going to taste together in a bit. And just because you mentioned the other brand, Schramsberg, that used to be my favorite American sparkler. This is now my favorite American sparkling wine. As you know, I had to taste off camera, because I cannot ingest the wine for now because of a medical condition that I'm trying to get better. And I was mind blown. I tasted it before getting into the interview. And the precision, the clarity, the purity of fruit, the nuance, the freshness is unbelievable. Let's get into the wine. So we have the Roederer Estate Brut, and this is from Anderson Valley, California, and this is mind-blowing. This is unbelievable. What I love here is the note of, you have the pear, you have the green apple, you have that sort of not buttery but bready, like a bakery, like fresh bread, that fermented note. You have a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of saltiness, a little bit of this beautiful spice. Does this see any oak? Is there any oak here?
Yes.
Okay, so you have that little that whiff, that little hint of spice, but it's all very so well bound or tight together that it's just impressive. The nose is, in a blind tasting, I guess an expert, and I am no expert, would say this is champagne. I mean, I wouldn't think this is New World, right? With all the respect in the world for the New World, of course, but this is so beautiful in the nose. What can you tell us about what goes into this bottle?
Sure. So thanks you for the descriptors. I enjoy those descriptors, and it's definitely how I would describe the wine. So yeah, this wine is mostly Chardonnay, 60% Chardonnay, 40% Pinot Noir. and it is method champenoise. So if you look at the color is not that nice, golden color, because when you do whole cluster pressing, basically, the Pinot Noir, the pigment in the skin are not extracted, so therefore, the wine doesn't get any color. So you make white wine out of Chardonnay, but also white wine out of Pinot Noir, on whole cluster. Then what is typical of the house, what we're trying to really achieve, is having something that is never too powerful, but that has power. So power is sometimes the description is like the iron fist in the velvet glove. It has density, but it doesn't have to be overpowering. And that's what the beauty of the Anderson Valley is. You can get very nice acidity, in this valley, and ripeness that matches it. So you have what you talked about, the green apple, the lemony, zesty type of character. This is the Chardonnay that brings that freshness and that acid feeling to it. And the Pinot brings more of the structure, the density to it. Then as you bottle it and then you age it on the yeast, you age on average 2.5 years. This is what we're trying to do. There's no rule in California. You want it, 1 week, 1 month, 10 years. There's no rule in California, but because we are French owned, we're applying some of the rules that apply to Champagne. And then a rule in Champagne is like it's a minimum of 15 months for non-vintage wine. It would be 36 months or 3 years for vintage. So at 2.5 years, I'm nearly close to that, nearly vintage character.
Spectacular.
So those crusty notes, you're talking about the bready character, the crustiness you have on it. This is from the yeast aging that brings some of that. It also brings the tactile feel of creaminess. And in each of those bottles, even though they are non-vintage, we call it a multi-vintage blend.
Okay.
Because I use cask wine, so about 10% of the wine that in that bottle comes from cask of one that has been aged on average for 4 years. So
I love how it evolves. And I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
So when we're talking about some oak contact, so not all of the wine went into oak, but 10% of the wine in that bottle went through oak, and it brings some also of the tannin texture, the structure of the wine. So it brings, we used to call it a little bit of spiciness. That's exactly what you want to bring. It's not like plain oak in your face, but this is something that brings a mid-palate and a finish. And this is very much house style.
What I love is that how it keeps changing and evolving and opening up in the glass. I mean, now I'm getting some ginger, green tea. There's a lemon oil component that's so typical of, I don't know, Chardonnay from Burgundy, I guess, that has that lemon oil note to it, stony, that note, that little bit of chalk as well. There's a lot of things happening on the nose here. Let's give it a taste.
Mm-hmm.
I love the volume. I love the structure. I love the freshness and the weightlessness. I mean, it has body, but it feels that it's dancing on your palate. I mean, it has weight, but it's weightless. I don't know if you get me. It's a little bit of the iron fist and the velvet glove kind of thing. It just caresses the palate, the tongue, and the gastronomic versatility. I mean, the ratio, the possibilities, the capacity to pair this with so many different things, ranging from seafood to duck to even some pork. I mean, it has structure and has this capacity to really clean and wow, I'm blown away, my friend.
So that's exactly why my parents always love, to drink champagne as an aperitif before a meal or a lunch or a dinner, because if it's a well-made, champagne, what it does, the sparkling wine, the acidity of the wine is a fantastic palate cleanser. Your stomach receives the wine. In fact, the acidity makes you actually your body ready for some food, because actually it's not overwhelming. It's just more like cleaning, opening you for some nice meal. So that's why my parents always would go for champagne.
I love this wine. I mean, from the people of Puerto Rico, I'm going to make a lot of noise with this bottle. You get it at La Cava de Serrayes. It's unbelievable. This would be an ideal St. Valentine's gift, or even to open it and taste it with your loved one. This is incredible. And it retails for a very reasonable price. I don't have the number right here, but I will share it with you in my comments later on. This is incredible. The best American sparkling wine I've had this year. Well, this year is only 2 months old, but this is incredible. It's incredible. So let's get into the next one, my friend. This is the Roederer Estate Rosé. Hey, sip with Simon. Cheers. I'm drinking some fantastic juice, my friend. Hope you're doing well. This is incredible. Yeah, probably around $30. I don't know what the price is in Puerto Rico for this, but even if it's 50, this is incredible. It's like you could stand this bottle next to a great champagne out of Champagne in France, and it can stand toe to toe. It's incredible. Okay, all right. Let's get into this one. I don't know, the Roederer Estate Rosé. What goes in this blend?
So in the case of the rosé, this is mostly Pinot. So this is not a Blanc de Noir. This is not 100% Pinot. This is 55% Pinot, and then 45% Chardonnay. The story about how to get rosé, it's a choice of some of the Pinot base that has already some color, but then in order to get to that very delicate copper salmon type of color, I make a red wine of Pinot Noir on the side. It's a very specific red wine made for that purpose. So it's like upfront fruit, not a very long maceration. In fact, a fairly short maceration. So you get fruitiness but no tannins, and then you add about 4 to 5% of that red wine in the blend before it gets bottled for the second fermentation. So the red is already in there, brings that more of a red berry fruit type of feeling and density. And what it does, it has the color, and when it ages, you lose a bit the red color. It gets more and more towards that, copper color, and that makes it, very, appealing. Very, think of it, a Provençal rosé type of color. It's a very delicate, it's a pale pink. I mean, it's a pale rosé. It's beautiful. Here I get the Pinot note, the spice, the rhubarb, the cola, that Pinot sort of red fruit, crunchy red fruit that a little bit of cranberry perhaps, and then there's the citrusy note, like blood orange of a kind. There's a rose petal, but then you also have that beautiful salinity. Like sometimes I smell the salinity in certain wines, and the flowers and the freshness. But you do have that dose of that delicious red fruit of the Pinot, and it's just and there's this note that it's I don't know if it's not copper. It's some irony note that it's very mineral, that smells like the earth. Like, I don't want to say dirt, a terroir. It's like a note of I don't know, when you grab dirt with your hands and you're working the dirt. I mean, it's a nice sort of funkiness that I'm loving, like fresh earth. I love it. Also delicious. All right. Yeah, there's something, a note that I like also to it when you were talking about this, like, is the cherry, the sour cherry type of feel. There's something very fresh, and precise, sour cherry.
And on the palate, you have obviously that beautiful volume, more structure, a little bit more density, perhaps. And I mean, this could pair with so many different foods. What do you try to pair this with when you are going to eat with your sparkling wine?
So when you compare side by side, you can really feel that the rosé has more width. The texture of that Pinot brings a bit more density, so it expands the meat palate. It's a little wider, so it tends to go very well with meat, with in fact anything, but also include meat. I always talk about that. That discovery I made years ago. I went to Boston and I did a dinner with the chef, and the chef, I decided a little bit last minute to do a food pairing with steak tartare, which is raw beef meat where you have a lot of spices. It can be pretty spicy. I never tried it, and I was thinking to myself, wow, it's going to be a disaster. I never tried that. That might not work. In fact, I was blown away by how much the acidity of the wine actually did cut through the spiciness of the food, but also the fat of the meat itself. So in fact, you have to think that a sparkling wine, because of its acidity, is a great way to cut through some fat. So think of a triple cheese, triple cream cheese. It's gonna cut through it. So think of it as steak tartare. It's gonna cut through it. Think of duck. Like duck on the crispy skin, it works fantastic.
I cannot stop thinking about a Chateaubriand with Béarnaise sauce. Oh my God. It goes so well with a good piece of meat. This is, for those of you who think that perhaps you cannot pair a rosé sparkling wine or a rosé champagne with meat, yes, you can. And you need something of this quality, of this balance. Ricky Cortez said the key word, balance. What I see in both of these wines is purity of fruit. I see balance, very good tension. I like wines that have some tension to them, right? That you feel that fruit in your palate, but also the backbone, the spice, the acidity, the finish. The end is long and it's salty and it's chalky and it's mineral and it's fresh. These are ethereal, beautiful, beautiful wines that combine, I think, the generosity of American soil. Yeah, Luis Marti, a dear friend, says tuna tartar. Interesting with the tuna tartar. Very interesting pairing. So I think it combines the best of both worlds, perhaps, where you have the generosity of the ripeness of the soil of the United States, especially in California, where you got that delicious fruit, and the know-how, the technicalities. I mean, the upbringing of a Frenchman and the French technique of the Louis Roederer house making this, and it's a spectacular combination. It's a win-win. It's like when we're speaking about the first war and the second war, when the Allies got together and defeated the Nazis. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful combination. I don't know. I really want to commend you. Before we wrap up, because I don't want to take too much of your time. What other wines do you make at Roederer Estate in California?
So we talked about it earlier, and also the tête de cuvée of Roederer Estate is called l'Hermitage. So it is a vintage cuvée. And the current release is a 2015. So the philosophy behind the Hermitage is to select the best lots of a given vintage, sometimes even from specific areas of the vineyard. As we learn more and more about the vineyard and its location, this is what we are trying to do, and age it even longer. So it's twice as long. So it's 5 to 6 years on the yeast of aging before disgorging, meaning you even enhance even more that feeling of like crustiness of a yeast extraction. So you lose a bit that California fruity character, and you go towards even more and more of that French style of something that's more yeasty driven, crusty driven, from the yeast aging. So it becomes even more French in its feeling and its taste. It's also sometimes some of the ones that have the most acid driven characteristics. The Hermitage doesn't feel like it because there's so much around the wine.
Ricky just took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna ask whether we're gonna see Hermitage at La Cava de Serrayes soon. Ricky says soon at La Cava de Serrayes. Please separate a couple of bottles for me. I don't know. Last question, and this is not personal, but it removes you a little bit from what you do for Roederer Estate. What do you drink for fun? I mean, when you're with friends, and I'm sure you're always drinking what you make to sample. It's part of your work. But if I go to your cellar, what do you have in there to treat friends, to share with family? What do you drink?
I'm a little eclectic. I have quite a few things in my cellar. But the Anderson Valley is known for Pinot Noir, so I drink a fair amount of Pinot Noir. Obviously sparkling, but also still wine. Quite a few, very nice estates around the valley of Pinot Noir. So check Anderson Valley Pinot Noir. It's great. I also like, to drink some French Chenin Blanc. I like, I like, some of those that are very, age on yeast. That have some of that, crusty, funkiness. I like that. I also drink, Italian. I like Barolos, Barbaresco. I have also a fair amount of Bordeaux wine, but I don't drink them. If quite frankly, this is the nice stuff. I have some good Bordeaux in my cellar, but if I go there and I go and pick something, my hand goes towards the Pinot or the Barolo faster than it goes to a bottle of Bordeaux. Not that I don't like them, but it's fun. It's like, you tend to
to save it for later. You always say there's time ahead, or there'll be another special moment. Yeah. Thank you, Arnaud. This has been a great interview. At least having you has been great. I don't know if I did a good job or not. These wines are unbelievable. For those who are watching now, those who will watch later on Instagram and YouTube, those who are in Puerto Rico, go to La Cava de Serrayes. This is the best American sparkling wine I've had. Roederer Estate Brut is incredible, and their rosé is mind-blowing as well. This would be beautiful for St. Valentine's, which is right around the corner. Beautiful color and beautiful possibilities here in terms of pairing. So thank you, Arnaud, very much. Hopefully we'll be able to speak or chat again in the future once I get my hands on some Hermitage and I can ingest it.
Absolutely.
Take care, my friend.
Thank
Have
you,
a great
Eduardo.
night.
Buenas noches, Puerto Rico.
Come visit Puerto Rico. We'll be waiting for you.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.